Welcome to the Lucent Perspective. I'm your host, Rebecca Hastings. I've spent over a decade working with executives in the tech sector and helped successful companies build their leadership teams and scale. During my career, I've been lucky to have the privilege of learning from many exceptional leaders. In these conversations, you'll get perspectives from peers, be inspired, and learn what it takes to become one of the best. This is your chance to listen to experts talking about the challenges, solutions, and the vital insights they've gained in their careers to date. I'm joined by Sophie Moule. Sophie started her career in Clark's in acquisition marketing and eventually led SEO and her own team. At this point, she was partnering with her current company, Pi Datametrics. Pi asked her to move to them as their head of marketing, and after 5 years in that role, Sophie took a really interesting career jump. She took on the role of head of product and marketing in 2021, which is something I just can't wait to find out more about. Sophie, it would be great if you could just tell me a bit about your career in marketing and how it created the foundations for you taking responsibility for product.
Yeah, of course. So my first job in marketing, as you said, Rebecca, was at Clark's Shoes. I started off as a marketing executive there and grew into an acquisition role where I was managing the affiliate display and search channels. Search is obviously a huge thing for all e-commerce businesses. And that was kind of the digital channel that I really resonated towards and I found really interesting. And it wasn't so much the kind of optimization side of SEO that was interesting me. It was the huge amount of data that there is around what people are searching for, not at a micro kind of detailed level, personal level, but at a macro level. What are people searching for at what times of year? And I just found it incredibly fascinating. I found relative search hugely fascinating. So things where the weather will impact what people are searching or the news will impact what people are searching. And you can see these huge macro shifts in people's behavior, obviously limited within a shoe kind of environment. Yeah. But still, it changed quite a lot with the weather, obviously, of what types of shoes people were searching for. So the search team gradually started pulling this data and sending it to the product team at Clark's. Which they loved because whilst they were getting a huge amount of intelligence from other sources, it took quite a long time to process all of that customer intent data. Whereas we could show them and go to the product team and say, searches for wide calf boots, for example, are just going up and up every year, or searches for a certain color children's shoe is going up. We'd feed that through to the product team and that would help dictate what products they were creating, which was quite a unique use of search data at the time. But they loved it and we loved it as a result as well, because we felt like we were really impacting, what products this huge international business was creating, as well as helping optimize the website to perform for those search terms as well. So that's really where I started enjoying the product world as well as the marketing world.
That's really interesting to hear about how they were using that kind of like marketing data, not just to sell to them, but to think, how do we make them actually happy, or how do we make the right products that are going to sell year on year? A lot of people don't take that long-term view with their search data.
Yeah, we found it fascinating, and we used to run sessions with different departments in Clark's to try and educate them on the value of this search data. And one of the kind of teams that we ran it with was the store teams, so people who were senior running all of Clark's Shoes stores. And they said that it was interesting to see that the reflection in what people were searching for online was really similar to what people were coming into store and asking for, and those kind of patterns. Obviously, if there's a certain trend, leopard print shoes that's come out in London Fashion Week or something, people will search for it online, but they will go into a store and ask for it as well. But the store staff didn't have that data to pass through because it was conversational. So I found the whole thing really fascinating.
And what other things, like from that, core marketing background, do you think have aided you?
I think when you start off in digital marketing, and particularly 10 years ago when I was working in e-commerce, you you do spend a lot of your time working across different teams to try and educate them as to the value of both digital marketing and, as I was talking about before, the intent data of customers, and working with different teams across brand and more traditional marketing channels and product, like I was saying, bringing those teams together to try and get some kind of cohesive strategy that's going to improve performance. So not necessarily a pure marketing skill, but I think the communication skills and the stakeholder influencing skills you gain when you're working in digital marketing have helped me later in my career getting the best outcome from multiple different teams in Pi Datametrics, where I work now.
Totally. I can see how marketing, you're going to have that really strong communication aspect, and the ability to influence is key to get anything done.
Yeah, definitely. I think also just that continuous push to remind the business that the customer is central to everything that we're doing. Everybody we're all guilty of it, getting stuck in internal processes. But I think marketing has that real responsibility to ensure that the customer is just absolutely central to everything that we're delivering. And if we're not in tune with those customer needs or those future customer needs, then the products that we're creating or the communications that we're putting out there just aren't going to resonate. And ultimately that won't help us lead to any kind of growth.
Yeah. So like listening to you speak, it really highlights that kind of like really positive impact that marketing and product can have on each other. So talk me through your transition from marketing to product. I just want to make sure that I understand how that came about, because it is a really interesting one.
Yeah. So it wasn't really one that I was ever planning actively to make, to be honest, but worked at a product company, Pi Datametrics, for 5 years. Pi Datametrics is an enterprise SEO platform, so it provides software to help people monitor their visibility online and helps them optimize that visibility and that performance. So I'm working with customers who are doing the job that I did when I was at Clark's. So from the offset, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of what their use cases were and what their pain points were. Obviously, you have to keep up to date with that because the digital world changes so quickly, as we all know. But as a basis, the people that we're marketing to were doing the same job that I was doing at Clark's. So having done the marketing role for 5 years, our head of product left the business for another opportunity. And I was having a conversation with our CEO about how I could take on some more responsibilities for product marketing. So some of the educational videos, some of the onboarding, and the conversation kind of went into the fact that why don't I try taking on the full product responsibility? I think there was the acknowledgement that the voice of the customer potentially wasn't as strong through the product team as it should have been. And whilst, our old head of product was incredibly technical, he could speak to the developers on their level about what they were building. And they were building amazing things. There was the general kind of sentiment that potentially they weren't building the things that the customers were really needing and wanting. And the things that we were putting out there weren't the products and features, weren't necessarily resonating as strongly as they could have with our customer base.
Yeah.
So, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, it's a really easy trap for businesses to fall into, to think that they know more than their customer.
Yeah. And is a trap for, the internal people to fall into as well, because these people know how to build products. They're incredibly talented at their jobs. They know what they're doing. And, that there is the risk that marketing teams can turn into advertising teams, so they can get handed something to go and sell, rather than doing that full piece of work from start to finish and helping the business understand who's your audience, who are you really trying to solve this problem for, what do they need, and what can we build them that's really going to help them do their job better. And I think quite frequently, I work with a lot of people in marketing, that's something that you have to push through the business. So you don't necessarily just get handed things to go and sell, which is obviously more of just a pure advertising role. So I took on the head of product and marketing role, and the first thing that we started doing was just talking to the customers all the time. Started setting up customer advisory boards, setting up lunches, setting up calls. And to begin with, obviously, that's challenging because these people have busy lives and they don't necessarily know who you are, and you're asking something of them and their time. But over time, you do start building relationships with these people, and they're happy to meet up with you and talk to you. And they've seen that their input is making a difference in the product and making a better product for them. Yeah. And they start getting more and more responsive. So, yeah.
So I'm interested, how did you go about bringing the teams together? Was that something you did? How did you get that kind of like cohesion between marketing and products so you could kind of realize those benefits?
Yeah, well, it was something I had to do really, not just with marketing and product, but with other teams across the business, because I didn't have the skill set to answer all the questions that I needed answering within that head of product role. So I wouldn't be able to do my job in product without talking continuously to the customer team, the CSMs, and the sales team. They're just an absolute goldmine of knowledge of what the customers are after and what the market needs. So we set up internal product advisory boards with champions from the customer team, from the sales team, from the marketing team as well, from the data analytics team. And they have such a diverse view on what we should be doing with the product, because the customer team representative is obviously talking about current customers' pain points with our product. So that's one thing. And then the sales team and the sales champions are talking about things that are going to help us acquire new customers, which can sometimes be quite different things. So yeah, it was kind of non-optional. I had to have all these people in the room because I didn't have the answers and I didn't have those original relationships with the customers. And they enjoyed it because it was a more diverse role for them to have in the business rather than pure sales. They enjoy having an input on what the product is going to look like. And obviously, when you have a salesperson who's helping you understand what the market needs, you take that on board, you put that into your product roadmap and you build it. They go out there with a huge amount of confidence to go and sell that feature or that tool because, they've helped contribute towards the building of it.
Yeah, and it's really powerful to then be able to go and say to a customer, you said if I built this, you'd buy it. Here it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got you on record saying it, so you have to sign this contract now. Yeah. So,
it's really interesting. But you seem so customer focused in your approach. Can you tell me more about how you get close to your customers and a bit more about those advisory boards?
Yeah, definitely. So, when I took on the role in November 2021, it was actually one of the first things I did was organised a customer advisory board session, mainly because I just wanted to hear what people really thought was missing from the platform and what they would like to see from it. We had data around this. We knew that one of the things our platform needed to improve on was around the UX and UI, but obviously it's one thing knowing what that problem is, it's another thing knowing how you can improve that with something that the customers are really going to like seeing. So we invited a very specific group of customers to a customer advisory board. We'd done our research around our best performing customers, the people that stayed with us the longest, the people that engaged most with the platform, and the people that we sold best to and had the highest conversion rates with. And there were actually a very specific group of people, e-commerce, people who worked in e-commerce at kind of a mid to senior level. We worked out there were enough people in that market for us to hit our growth goals by, the e-commerce market is big enough for us. So we invited that specific set of people to a customer advisory board and, put on lunch and beers and made it sound really fun. So it's not just kind of a boring workshop. And we offered a talk from one of our search experts, John Earnshaw, who people love hearing to speak. So we offered those customers value as well, saying, come along and hear John speak, and we'll put on lunch, we'll put on beers, and we'd love to hear from you about how we can improve the product. And I think what was really important in these sessions is it's not just a free-for-all of everybody just talking and having an opinion. It was a very structured session. We had framework, we had worksheets, we separated people out into groups. We knew the question that we wanted answered before we went into the session, which was around how we could improve the UX, the UI of the platform. So it was very much like, go away and brainstorm, come back, distill, and continue that process. And what we got out of it, which was super interesting, was that people thought that Pi, our product, had everything that you needed in it to create amazing reports for the business, but it took them a good few hours to pull it from all the different places in the product. And there was a general consensus amongst all of the customers that day that what we needed was a central place with all of those key figures in. So out of that session, we developed a reporting dashboard, which brought all of those key metrics to the front of the product and reduced the customer reporting time from a few hours to, seeing all the data they needed instantly. And the benefit of having a very specific group of users in that session was that they all had the same use case, and they all discussed and agreed on what those key metrics should be for reporting back to the business. So that was kind of a really great win that came out of the first customer advisory board session. And it's similar to the internal product advisory board. Once they'd seen those dashboards come out, which was something that they'd helped design, they love it. It's really exciting for them, and they want to come along to the next customer advisory board session.
That's really interesting about that, like the focus that you had about who your ideal kind of customer and their persona was, and that you were going to double down on that. A lot of people end up being quite sales driven about their growth and go kind of like where they think that the last person has told them to. And, this is something that I think lots of us are at risk of doing just now. As the economy maybe is like slowing down a little bit, or growth is slowing down, investment in tech is getting a bit tighter, everyone's under pressure to make that exit happen. It's very easy to go where you think the money is, rather than focus on what you can do to maximize your existing product and be clear about your mission, your purpose. This is who you're serving, and not everyone is the ideal customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think I thought about that a lot more in the product role than I ever did in the marketing role. I think I definitely was guilty of being too guilty with our target audience when I was in a pure marketing role at Pi, because you get excited and passionate about your product, and you think it will be useful to so many different types of people. And obviously it's attractive when you're working in marketing and sales to expand that target audience as much as possible. But transitioning over to the product role and seeing what our competitors were putting out there. I mean, SEO is an incredibly saturated market, and we have some wildly well-funded big American competitors. And if we tried to compete with them on the breadth of those products and features that they were putting out there, I mean, we just would be going nowhere, really. But to find a specific group of customers in that niche that we can really deeply solve their problems for them and build a product that's kind of specialist for them, you can go to those competitors' customers with confidence and say, we've built this product specifically for you, and we know that it's better for you than these more generalized products. But it takes quite a lot of attrition within a business to gain confidence behind that kind of a strategy. Like I said, you just go back to data, you go back to looking at who your best customers are. And it makes sense, the shorter time to close in the pipeline, higher conversion rate, higher lifetime value, you can start to see who your really good customers are. And then if you do the market research and realize there's enough people like that out there for you to achieve the growth you want, it makes everything easier. It makes you more focused in your product development cycles. It also helps better sales enablement because there's one consistent story for your business development reps and your sales teams to be talking through rather than having to learn, multiple different stories. So it's worked really well for us at Pi.
It sounds like it's been a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it probably took a year, to be honest. It's not something that happens overnight. Like, it took a year for us to get everyone really behind that strategy and start seeing the results. But I think when you start finding it easier and your business development reps are finding it easier to portray your points of difference, you know that you're in a good place because you say, we are definitely the best SEO platform for this group of people. So yeah, I think we've seen some really nice, well, we have seen some great growth off the back of that.
So obviously people are, going to buy into this like mutual success, but they don't see it instantly. So how did you get people on board with these changes? Because it is, a big change for a company to be focused that way on their customers and, really driven by them.
Yeah, definitely. And especially with that narrowing the target audience, you can seem that as if you're being, less ambitious because you're not trying to service as many different groups of people. But I think what it really comes down to is doing small things well and seeing the results and communicating those successes back to the business. And then you gain trust from the stakeholders within the business that you should go and do the next thing on that journey. I think it massively helped having all the buy-in from the different teams who were then championing what we were doing and the processes we were applying. They were championing that within their own teams and with their team heads, and they were excited about it. But I think after the customer advisory board and the initial feedback we got from that and the work that came out of that, people did start to gain confidence in what we were doing. But it was what came out of the customer advisory board was actually quite different to what the original plan for the product was. So that took quite a lot of convincing to say, we have this roadmap here that was developed, not necessarily in line with customers, but we think we should scrap the whole thing and do this instead. But it was just one thing at a time. It was just saying, okay, let's try and do this one thing first, see how it works, and then do the next thing. And now we're in a place where the roadmap is completely customer driven.
So you've seen a lot of growth in the company while you've been there. What's helped to drive this?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people that work for Pi, because it is a nice place to work, they stay there for a very long time. And we all have to take some responsibility for seeking external knowledge and bringing that back into the company to help keep what we're doing, fresh and in line with what the market's doing. So I'm really lucky. I had a mentor, Matt Little from Blue Ocean Insight. So when I started my product role, obviously I'd never worked in product at all. And whilst I had all my marketing skills, I didn't know anything about product processes or product development cycles or anything. So trying to find experts outside of the company to help inform what you're doing is invaluable. I mean, everything, the customer advisory boards and our product development processes came out of that external help. The marketing team's the same, so they're continuously trying to improve their knowledge and skill set through all the HubSpot Academy things. There's so many things out there online that help them do their jobs better. I know the customer success team are the same at Pi and the development team. So trying to not be an echo chamber within your own company and just knowing what you know and hoping that you're going to grow that way, but seeking that external knowledge in every single function, bringing it back to the company and learning from it, I think has been incredibly important for us. I think, as we covered briefly before, narrowing down that target audience and being really specific as to who you're selling to, like you said, that has been a game changer for us. Otherwise, you're kind of flapping around in the wind a little bit, but really defining who you're selling to, what their workflows are, what their use cases are, what their pain points are, has kind of distilled all of our processes to be a lot more efficient. And we've seen some nice growth off the back of that. And just surrounding yourself with really talented people, to be honest. I mean, I'm lucky I've got amazing people across the business, but marketing and product, there's some amazing people in my team. And it was actually the original reason I wanted to make the move from Clarks to Pi when I was a customer of Pi, was because I just thought they were a really talented bunch of people that I wanted to go and learn from. So, yeah.
So lots of internal sources to learn from and external sources. It's interesting that you mentioned Matt, because we previously had him on as a guest to talk about product as well.
Yeah.
Beyond things like HubSpot and those kind of tools, what other kind of like external sources would you recommend? Were there any blogs or books that you found useful in helping you move more into product, or to build the knowledge gaps that you had?
Yes, definitely. So there's a couple more broad business books. There's one called Good to Great, which was a massive influencer for me in, the whole premise of that is find out what you do well and do that really well, rather than trying to do everything. So that was a huge takeaway I took from Good to Great that helped with, the whole strategy of narrowing down our target audience. And that's, more broader business strategy. And there are two books, again, that Matt recommended to us, Inspired and Empowered, which my predecessor also read from cover to cover. I did, and our head of development did as well. And, it just helps cover off all of those processes we were talking about bringing the customer central to your product roadmap, building confidence through those product development processes, prioritizing things. They were just invaluable. And I still have them on my desk as, reference points with loads of sticky Post-its in. So it's not, a read and park it. They're kind of reference books as well.
Those are really good recommendations. So Good to Great and Inspired and Empowered. I'll make sure that they're mentioned in the show notes if anyone's looking to read them. So it sounds like you were doing, a lot of learning to make yourself better, to drive the growth. And the other area that really helped drive the growth was the kind of focus in on that target audience. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, anyone that wants to work in digital marketing or product, they have to have a learning first mentality, because even if you're an expert, you won't be tomorrow. And I think there isn't a single course out there you could do that would keep you informed at the point you needed to be for your job. You have to be proactive and you have to be seeking education all the time. Otherwise, your knowledge is just outdated so quickly.
So there's lots of people who are in marketing who want to get more involved into product. So I've got a couple of questions about this. So like the first one, because we've covered a lot of the like personal side of like what you did, but what kind of business types or business conditions do you think make having product and marketing under one leader like an excellent strategic move for growth? Because it's probably not going to be for every company, but I'm sure you've maybe thought, oh, I think it would work really well there. So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think for SaaS products as a whole, to be honest, I think it works really well, because it's not necessarily that one-on-one customer interaction. It's identifying groups of people with a common pain point or a common use case that you're going to build a product around. So I think that is a big area where I think it works really well, because you're using all those market research skills to try and identify, your ICP or right target audience, and see if that's, enough of a market for you to hit your growth goals, and then try and deeply understand what their use cases are and what product you should be building for them. I think, there are lots of products out there where it is more tailored, and, it needs an expert in that sector to have built that product, rather than just the marketing person doing the market research.
Yeah, definitely some niche e-commerce businesses. I can see it would work really well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And like my next question, so like some people will assume that product is, maybe just a little bit more technical. I mean, then marketing, I would say it is just slightly different technicalities than marketing. But like, what were the big things for you that helped build your self confidence in that area? Because, like, for me, I imagine if I were to take on like a whole area of the business that I hadn't worked in, it would be a little bit daunting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how did you deal with that?
I mean, it was incredibly daunting. And I remember sitting in the first sprint review with our development team and just feeling like the world's biggest charlatan and thinking, you know, they're all thinking, why on earth is she here? She's never worked in product. Obviously, they weren't thinking that, but that's how you feel when you're in that position. I think working really closely with our head of development helped a lot, because at the start, I think, we were both almost questioning why I was there, to be honest. But when he started seeing some of the intel we were pulling around our best customers, customer types, and helping, work together on understanding what the overall business strategy should be for growth, they do start seeing the value that you're bringing to that team and the skill set that hasn't necessarily been there before. And I think developers want to build things that people are using. Like no developer wants to waste their time building something that sits on the shelf and goes unused. So once we'd put a few things out there, and I was using our time with the developers to not only showcase what they'd built, but report back and say, this feature that you've built has increased adoption by X, and this customer was going to leave, but now they're not. Or we've just signed this huge American business because they specifically like this feature which you put out there. It makes work more purposeful and rewarding for them as well. And I think, you're all working together to increase each other's knowledge and each other's skill set across the business, which again just makes work, well, I think it makes work more enjoyable for everybody, because you're all working towards this common goal rather than just diffused kind of functions within the business.
It sounds like a wonderful team environment that you have there. But from what I'm picking up, it's like you leaned into your strengths, and very quickly people around you started to value that slightly different perspective and, like more diverse opinion base than they'd been getting previously.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. And that was something that actually my CEO did support me very much to do. Don't try and do this role in the way that the previous person did it. You don't have to replicate what they were doing. You don't have to have the same skill sets as them. We've put you in this role because of your skill sets with communication and the marketing background I had. So make sure you don't try and try and change your skill sets. Just lean in, like you said, to what you are good at and see what impact that has.
That's really positive to hear. So that kind of journey, you had a lot of support and positive feedback around you by the sounds of things, which always helps.
Yes, definitely.
So as you built your confidence, how did you gain the confidence of the product team? Because I'm sure this wasn't the case, but I know that there would be product people listening who maybe think, oh, it might be really difficult to be managed by a marketeer.
Yeah.
What would they know?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they might have a point, but yeah. So our product team are actually, none of the people in our product team, so I'm in a quite unique position, have had that product background. Our product team is made up of a UX and design expert and data scientist, because we're a data company, and a head of development. And I think we were all in acknowledgement that we were all trying to learn together how to do this in a way that was going to be successful. So I can't necessarily offer up any experience, experience or opinions for people that are going in to manage a role of well-versed product managers, because that wasn't the environment that I was in. I was in an environment where we were all trying to figure out how to do it together, and learn together. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a different kind of situation.
So it sounds like there's a lovely mindset, and that kind of attitude to learning is so important for having kind of like a growth mindset in an organization. So it sounds like there's a really solid base there. What do you think like the key benefits are that a business could get from having someone lead product who is from the marketing background. There's obviously like the customer focus, the communication, the influencing skills that may be stronger sometimes. Is there anything else that you think can help?
I think, we've covered off a lot of them. The one thing I would add to that is just, particularly with obviously the digital marketing background, having those analytic skills, and having that more commercial mindset than maybe somebody who'd worked in pure product. Because in digital marketing, you're constantly trying to look for what's working, what's performing well, and how can we scale that? And you use a lot of data to do that. And I think that's completely transferable to the product world. Which parts of the product are working well, let's invest more in that. Which parts of the product aren't working so well, or customers are struggling with, and how can we go and fix that or remove it completely. So the only additional thing I think I'd add onto that original list is just that kind of analytical mindset, which I think, particularly people who've worked across digital marketing are usually quite strong at.
Yeah. And that kind of like ease of comfort with data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Makes it so much easier. Well, Sophie, this has been like really fascinating. I've very much enjoyed learning from your experiences today. If anyone's got any questions about it specifically, I'm sure you don't mind if they reach out to you on LinkedIn. I'll put your details in the show notes so that people can find you easily. But thanks so much for all of your input today.
No worries at all. Thanks very much for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for listening to The Lucent Perspective. I'm Rebecca Hastings, founder and director at the Lucent Group, a tech sector executive search and talent consultancy. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. If you're a company looking to hire top technology leaders, or you'd like to discuss your next move, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me an email to rebecca@thelucentgroup.co.uk. Thanks again for listening today.